the shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, the Swedish bomber that chose peace, special, learning new aerobatics, and metal beasts, the updated Sheridan. The Airborne General Battle Pass is well underway, and now we'd like to get a look at its main rewards. And we'll start with the very vehicle that gave its name to this season. Please welcome a special version of the famous Sheridan airborne assault vehicle, the M551 76. The classic Sheridan made its in-game debut with the Flaming Arrows update, some long 8 years ago. Man, time flies. The Sheridan made great progress in this time. It became one of the first HEGM carriers in the game, served as the top light tank for the United States, and even had a career as a football player. These days, though, the M551 is mostly forgotten. So why don't we dust off the legendary machine with the new modification? The main new feature is a rifled bore 76mm gun that replaces the launcher. It does reduce the overall firepower, but this vehicle also has a lower battle rating. Actually, the main feature isn't a new gun. Our players should recognize it, since another light tank uses it as well, the M41 Walker Bulldog. It even offers a familiar choice of ammo. The first of the main shells is a discarding Sabot one. It has a penetration rate reaching 300mm, which allows it to front pen most opponents that it can encounter in battle. For instance, the Sheridan has no trouble piercing the front of the Panther or the turret of the King Tiger. There's an expected flaw as well, namely a weak after-penetration effect. When using DS shells, it's a good idea to memorize the positions of crew members, ammo storages, and other important modules. Another available type of ammunition for this tank is armor-piercing, ballistic capped shots. They have no explosives inside either, but their mass and size produce a somewhat effective stream of shrapnel. These shells may be useful when flanking or attacking lightly armored vehicles. The tank can also use high explosive rounds, which are great against open-top targets, but unfortunately, your total ammo pool is only 23 shots. It's a pretty low number for such a high rate of fire, so you'll have to make your own decisions whether you want to load HE shells in each particular battle. Additionally, this American tank can wipe out enemy anti-air vehicles with a classic, large-caliber Browning machine gun mounted on the roof. In all other aspects, this is still the same Vietnam War legend. It has a high enough mobility to reach key positions first, and compared to the sluggish Rank 4 heavies, the Sheridan feels even more agile. It still has the same aluminum armor that can be ripped apart with a finger poke or a side glance, so we strongly recommend against waltzing in front of the enemy. Besides, this tank still enjoys a two-plane stabilizer inherited from the other model. You can always shoot first and decide the outcome of the duel. So there's this Swedish bomber, the Saab 18, and people say it's a Junkers? Who even made this statement? And how did it get so popular? Anyways, there's a more interesting question. How and why did Sweden even make this aircraft in the first place? Bombers are inherently offensive vehicles, but Sweden officially kept neutral in the first half of the 20th century and had no plans to begin any offensives. So, why? How? Well, here's the story. The Swedish military wasn't in a rush to create its own fast bomber. While the rest of the world was trying to outrace each other's designs, the Swedish Air Force Command just shrugged. Let them race all they want. We've got the B-3Cs. Although their crews are mostly learning to bomb distressed naval vessels with rescue aid. Still, they fly well, they're sturdy and reliable. What else do you need in this quiet, relaxed corner of the mad world? Even when World War II began, the Swedish engineers focused on creating a tactical fighter, only spending the remaining breadcrumbs of time on a new frontline bomber. Surprisingly, this is precisely what made the Saab 18 so remarkable. Its development process was done in due time, with none of the concessions so often brought by tight deadlines. Swedish engineers had a great understanding of the trend forming in the early days of the war. Twin-engine aircraft must be multi-role. If you design a plane with a bomber in mind, you might want to be able to use it to build a diver, a torpedo bomber, a night fighter, a recon aircraft, and an aerial command center. So the Swedes studied numerous planes of this kind, discovered their pros and cons, and produced objective assessments. The Bf-110, the Pote 630, and the PE-2 captured by the Finns were deemed too light and underarmed. The Junkers 88 was larger and heavier than desired. The A-20 and the B-25 had issues with high altitudes. By the way, the Swedes learned that from American engineers they'd hired in large numbers. Do you see where this was going? What they were doing wasn't a simple development process. It was a form of art. They were deliberately looking for the golden mean among twin-engine, multi-role combat aircraft, when they also included the idea to add armor as seen on the Soviet IL-2. You might guess the result. The first B-18A using radial engines, copies of the American Pratt & Whitney, entered service in as late as the summer of 1944, when the end of the Second World War was already in sight. The next modification received a stronger Daimler-Benz 605 and was designated B-18B. Its flight performance was so impressive that it was immediately used as a base for the T-18, a torpedo bomber. Any of the aircraft could also become a photo reconnaissance plane. The potential is enormous. Saab teams worked 24/7 on a new night fighter. It was to receive a robust onboard radar system, probably an American one, or something from the Germans. Depends on whose terms are better. But why? No one was going to bomb Swedish cities at night. Swedish pilots weren't going to bomb anyone either. They could maybe bomb some sailors with inflatable boats and life vests. Basically, that's exactly what they regularly trained for until 1957. They also disregarded all the offers Saab made to replace the old piston engines with jet ones. No need, they said. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. A little while ago, we performed the famous Pugachev's Cobra maneuver on the legendary Su-27. You liked our aerobatics so much that some of you suggested we try a few other maneuvers as well. One of the most popular requests was the Bell maneuver. Well, why don't we give it a try today? It's hard to determine who exactly performed the maneuver first, or when and where it happened. Who's the original author? What are the rules? It's all a mystery. As it often happens, the name and the rules differ depending on who you ask. What we know for certain is little. 1, this maneuver was first used during the prop aircraft era. And 2, jet aircraft were long thought to be unable to perform it in any way. Well, let's start our sample session with a World War II era fighter. How about the Japanese Ki-84? There's something aerobatic about it, and the camo's fitting too. Let's start. First, we need to fly almost straight up, lose all the speed we have, and start sinking with our tail first. Then we have 2 options on how to proceed. In option 1, the plane needs to pitch its nose down and dive to get back to speed. In option 2, the plane makes a flip before beginning to accelerate. We'll learn both today. It would be wise to gain an altitude of around 1 kilometer to have some space left for the dive, and a speed of around 400 kilometers an hour to lose it quicker. Pull the throttle and aim for an angle of around 85 degrees. Then reduce the throttle to slow down, wait for the speed to drop almost all the way to 0, and pitch down. The plane jerks into a dive, and all that's left is to bring it back to level flight. Let's try it again. Repeating the same actions, almost stopping mid-air, but now pull the handle at the highest point to perform that backflip. The second variation is complete. With some extra training on roll control, you can perform the Bell maneuver just as smooth and pretty as they do in air shows. Now, the history of this maneuver has an event we can't ignore. We've mentioned that the Bell was considered possible only on prop aircraft, due to the fact that jet engines couldn't work at such extreme attack angles and near 0 speeds. Well, as it later turned out, this wasn't true. We don't know who was the first to perform the bell on a jet, but the history of aerobatics holds another important date. During the 1988 Farnborough Air Show, test pilot Anatoly Kvocher gave the first public performance of the bell maneuver on the MiG-29 jet. Since then, the jet version of the bell is often called Kvocher's bell. It's done the same way as on a prop aircraft. Pitch the nose up until it's almost vertical, bleed speed to near zero, and send the plane into a dive. Tell us in the comments what aircraft you can perform a bell with, and what other maneuvers would you like us to try? Meanwhile, it's time for us to answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called CG. What's that device placed vertically on the bottom right side of the fuselage, just underneath the cockpit on the A-10? Hi CG, it's a sensor called a pave penny. Aircraft can use it to track laser designators on the ground. Stealthy Shot writes, please let the Yak 141 carry 4 27 ERs or ETs now. Hey there, Stealthy Shot, almost missed you. The limit on the number of top missiles the Yak 141 can carry has to do with the design, not with an artificial in-game nerf. R-27Es are larger than the base model, so they can't fit on the external hardpoints. Another question comes from Skinny Snorlax. What's the little fin at the end of the Challenger 2's barrel? Hi Snorlax, that little fin is a muzzle reference system that you can also spot on many modern tanks. It tracks even minuscule deviations in the geometry of the barrel that happen due to uneven heating, and allow the fire control system to compensate for them. Luca Tail asks, what's the difference between standard countermeasures and reinforced flares? Hello, Luca. The only difference is that reinforced sets launch flares in twos. It improves their chances of throwing a missile's guidance off. And the last comment for today was written by Jeb724. Could you do a pages of history on the time when an F-15 flew back to base with only one wing? Hi, Jeb. That's actually a great story. We'll feature it in one of our pages of history sections. Thanks for the idea. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to do a barrel roll. Leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.